studying the rules. And of all the topics that Alida has talked about, besides just talking about the divine itself and the revelation, probably the guru-devotee relationship is what he's talked about most. Because as Westerners, we have so little understanding of how to use a guru.
Zero.
It's something about it. You always think, in the West right now, the idea is that the guru is going to pick your pocket. The guru is going to take something
and
from
sell
you.
your wallet, as Alan Watts said.
Yeah, you're going to be worked over by the guru. The guru can't be genuine, and he's going to, and you're supposed to do it for yourself. And
right.
It's even to have a guru means you're less of a person,
right,
because you're getting some help. So we're like 6-shooter. We're like cowboys in the West with our 6 shooters, just like and we got our own houses, with our own entertainment systems. We're like kings and queens, with our own DVDs and big screen, TVs and video games, and we've got our intimates that we can have sex with, or what Alida used to call them our pleasure units. I mean, we're all set up, just like the pleasures that go into a supermarket. Our refrigerator is stocked with everything. Why do we need the guru?
Right.
And so I studied the guru-devotee relationship that week, and really started to see places in which I was just a Westerner who basically was resentful of anybody dealing with me, of anybody kicking my ass. There was a certain kind of understanding of my own need for spiritual life that was lacking at that point, because that's why you come to the guru, because you understand the caught that you're in, the bind that you're in, and you feel the desire for what's greater. Adida calls that the dual sensitivity.
Right.
You're awakened. And without that, a guru is not necessary. If you're not awakened to that dual sensitivity of being sensitive to your self-contraction, that nothing you do is going to make it. None of the things that you try to do in the realm of money, food, and sex, of all your social egoity, is going to really amount to it. And that's a topic, that's a whole topic in and of itself, that dual sensitivity, or the other sensitivity, which is to what's greater. And when those two sensitivities are alive, then we need a guru. Then a guru is important. And so I studied those rules of guru-devotee relationship. And as things happened around Adida, as you were describing before, it was a psychophysical process. Adida, around him, it was always miraculous.
Right.
There was always in his sphere psychophysical things that happened. You finally realized the truth of that. The guru was just inserted into reality at the core, at the heart of the mandala. And so around his company, for all the years I was around him, unbelievable things would occur. All the devotees can testify to that there were all sorts of miraculous things full of what they call in the tradition siddhi, this blessing, this energetic insertion into reality, a great accomplishing power was always there. So I'm preparing all this material. I remember I still have them. I made index cards for all the rules. I had an index card for all the rules of the guru-devotee relationship. And then on each rule, then I would put subpoints underneath it. So I had those prepared, and I was going to do a presentation to devotees. So right as I'm going to do the presentation, someone comes to me with a message from Adida saying, "Oh, you're invited to come see Adida tonight again." And right after your presentation. And I went over to the house, and Adida, I hadn't seen him since that "excuse me" incident. And he looks over at me and says, "So, how's it been going, James?" And I go, "Very good, Bhagavan." I said, "I just did a presentation on the guru-devotee relationship." And he raises his eyes and he smiles, and that was it. And Adida never held on that way. Never would hold on to anything. I mean, as soon as you got the point, then that was done. There was no grudges in that sort of thing. But if you got mileage out of a particular criticism, because you weren't getting the point, then it would go on and on and on. And with me, it was always Indian fetishism. For me, it was always dealing with me and honing my discrimination. He expected me to absolutely understand, and to understand the distinctions. Not because, for example, you have in the 19th and 20th century an extraordinary 4th-stage saint like Shirdi Sai Baba or Ramakrishna. Extraordinary 5th-stage saints like Swami Muktananda or Swami Nityananda. Extraordinary 6th-stage saint like Ramana Maharshi. And Adida said, there's a whole history of thousands of years, but just these figures themselves are examples of great, great realizers of those traditions. And he said they're all realizers, but they're realizers who have an orientation.
Right.
They have a particular point of view. And it's useful to understand what that point of view is. And they're great beings, but they describe realization in a particular way. And by understanding how they describe it, then you can see in yourself when you're falling into that trap, that limit. So Adida in the 7th stage of life talks about the errors of the 4th stage of life, and the error in the 5th stage of life. And the error at the 4th stage of life is what prevents you from moving to the 5th stage, or to the 6th stage, or ultimately 7th stage. So it's extremely valuable.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned the word discrimination, or the quality or the characteristic of that. And I'm reminded of a statement that Adida once made that said that during his spiritual sadhana, which was prior to the 1970 realization, he said doubt was his siddhi, meaning that he had to kind of go through his sadhana with discrimination, and without discrimination, you're lost, because you are then a believer or a follower or whatever. You haven't really. I'm reminded in the beginning of all the books, of all the Dawn Horse books, it says you're responding to a call, and it's your responsibility. You're not here to believe, to follow, to take up. And this is your dharma, your sadhana. So Adida in all the books always brings up the fact that discrimination is essential.
Well, Adida said for many, many times that he teaches the real thing. And the real thing is a hard school. He calls it a happy way of life, but it's a hard school in which each devotee must learn the lessons that we all have to go through. Now, there's great help for that. That's why he calls it the happy way of life.
Right.
But part of that, he encouraged his devotees to study the traditions. I mean, many spiritual teachers say, just read my books. Don't read anything else. That will just take you the wrong direction. Adida said, no, read all these spiritual books. Go through that study. Develop that discrimination so you can basically see where the errors are and where the truth is. Mm-hmm. And he would try to uncover hidden attachments. So, for example, because he taught in the West, Adida had many Christian devotees.
Right.
And so he would talk about Jesus.
Wow.
And a lot of the hidden ideas that people had, such as that Jesus ascended in his physical body to the heavens.
That's one of the major points of Christianity.
Christianity, right? The resurrection.
Absolutely.
And so forth. And Adida would then point out that that was a Christian myth, that it was a teaching method given. At the time, when it was taught in the early days, people just assumed, because of their physical orientation, that heaven must be above because the earth was flat, and therefore you have to go above. But, he says, in modern times, to now feel that there's some heaven is some physical place that you could take an airplane to, and now you're in heaven, doesn't make sense anymore. But still, as a myth, because it's uninspected, we have that.
Right.
And so it was very important to Adida to help his devotees to inspect those myths and develop discrimination to understand there is a story being pointed to. There's a story of transcendence, of attachment to the world and going to some greater spiritual place. But to now take it and make it a literal place, a literal story, he says, is to be, therefore to be caught.
And this is, I think, one of the main distinctions that Adida has, although the teachings, whether it be Maha-Ati or Advaita, or, it's always here and now, Ramdas, and all of that stuff, there is a subtle message behind that. It is transcendent. It's somewhere else. It's not here. And where Adida continually brings the ego or the mind back to, it's always before anything. It's always present. It's not somewhere else.
This is the moment of understanding.
Right.
This is the moment of liberation. This is the moment of freedom. Otherwise, it's a search. And Adida always cut through the search.
Right.
That's the radical way.
And it's not just a mind dharma, because a lot of people today then can excuse any sadhana, any spiritual practice, because
Adida criticizes what he calls the talking school, in which somehow, just by talking about it, you feel like that's it.
right.
And there are even great realizers, but the way that they taught was the talking school.
Right.
So their own realization might have been a true realization. I'm thinking now of one individual, Nisargadatta Maharaj, who many people know, this individual who taught his teaching was the talking school, even though Adida acknowledged him as a six-stage realizer, but the teaching he gave was about talk. And somehow through an argument, you could realize. And Adida said, no, you have to practice. And Adida distinguished between the talking school and the practicing school. Mm-hmm. And Adida was a firm believer in the practicing school. Right. And that you needed to actually practice and transform the body-mind, and in life, as you described.
In life, and as you said, it's in the body, not in the body, but as the body, that this purification, if you will, which is basically meaning as liberating the binding attention to various energy forms, whether it be
any kind of attachment or obsessiveness, and both sides of it, whether you're pulling away from it or you're obsessed with it. In both cases, freedom relative to whatever arises. Freedom relative to any experiences in the body, freedom relative to anything that occurs in the subtle phenomenon, your subjectivity, freedom even or ultimately relative to attention itself. And prior to attention, which is the most subtle form of contraction, even attention, is the witness or the consciousness itself, which is ultimately has to be undone. Mm-hmm. And that's done through the grace of the Guru, through the recognition of the Guru, through the gift of the Guru. All that is undone. But absolutely in life, not trying to get away from life, not trying to somehow not allow the whole body-mind to be transformed so the energy and attention is freed